Good morning. So I was once taught that a homily is somehow a shorter sermon, which I think makes an address a longer sermon, but I promise you it will not be 1 hour and 47 minutes. Here we go. This is my 11th address as your bishop. 11 years. Years that have included hurricanes, a global pandemic, institutional strain, and now a political climate that feels at times like a storm. And yet I can still say this without hesitation. My name is Russell. I love Jesus, and I'm proud to be an Episcopalian. And I continue to be deeply humbled and honored to serve as your bishop. So before we go any further, let's give some thanks. Please join me in thanking the good folks of St. Francis Gulf Breeze. True to the vision of their patron saint, they are in a season of rebuilding their church by means of their senior citizen community center. Ask them about it. A day does not pass that their building is not bustling with people, artists, musicians, bridge players, yoga students, and more. The Spirit is very much alive, and that Spirit has also spilled over into Sunday mornings. Even raccoons, a wandering bear, and a neighborhood pig testify that all God's critters got a place at St. Francis. And to our clergy, thank you. You have tethered your lives to this church in turbulent waters. In the letters I receive from those confirmed and received, one theme surfaces again and again in lines like this: my priest helped me to find grace. My clergy taught me that doubt is okay. My pastor helped me to put behind the past. You promised at your ordination to nourish Christ's people from the riches of his grace, and you do. You do so faithfully, quietly, and relentlessly. So thank you. And thank you to all the lay delegates in the room. I don't know how you got here, whether you were elected, persuaded, or bribed. But I really do believe this. You are the leaders of this diocese because that's who you are. You may not feel like leaders at times, but you are. Your ministry matters. Your life matters. Your witness matters. Thank you for the light that you shine in this world. Thank you for adjusting your life to be here for the next 24 hours or so. Each year, our convention theme is born from prayer and what I like to call my sanctified imagination. Listening for what the Spirit may be inviting us to notice at this time in our life together. Since we decided to locate this convention at the shoreline of the Gulf, this year's theme began with a focus on creation, let there be light. Some of you actually might remember my ordination in Mobile, when representatives from all of our congregations processed carrying water in bottles and cruets that came from natural sources near your churches: rivers, bays, lakes, springs, the Gulf. It was more than symbolism. It was meant as a declaration that we belong to this ecosystem that is intimately and integrated and intertwined with water. It was also meant as a declaration of who we are spiritually, integrated in the waters of baptism. One Lord, one faith, one church, adopted as the children of God, citizens of God's kingdom, builders of heaven on earth. Then last week, something happened that expanded this theme for me. I was listening to a podcast of an interview with an Anglican theologian and futurist named Rachel Hatch. A futurist is someone who studies trends, data, and signs and things like that to forecast potential probable futures. And during the program, she voiced a question that has stayed with me. Whose imagination are you living in? Now, if imagination feels a little abstract to you, substitute the word narrative, ideology, reality, story. Ms. Hatch went on to explain that none of us live in neutral space. We inhabit constructed or imagined worlds, political, economic, technological, therapeutic worlds. that tell us what is real, what is value, what is possible, and most of the time we are not even aware which imagination is shaping us, or worse yet, seizing us. There is the imagination of the market, which whispers you are what you produce or achieve. Your value is measurable. There is never enough. It categorizes us by comparison, competition, and performance, and beneath it all is the quiet anxiety, am I enough? There is the political imagination, particularly in this season in the United States. It is really loud. It is too often driven by aggression that divides the world into us versus them. It teaches us to know ourselves by choosing sides. It even tempts the church to confuse nationalism with holiness. There is the therapeutic imagination. It can bring healing, but at its worst, it reduces the highest good to personal happiness and erodes truth and reduces truth to a focus on self alone. And there is the technological imagination. This is the world driven by algorithms that are addicted to metrics. It is impatient with mystery, suspicious of grace. It trains us to believe that visibility equals value and attention equals worth. Ambition, anxiety, aggression, achievement, algorithms, these imaginations of our world tempt us and test us daily. And if we're not careful, we can even begin shaping our congregations by these imaginations of our world rather than by the gospel. And yet there is an imagination in this world that is not of this world, the sanctified imagination of God, that we witnessed in the beginning when God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. Not merely illumination or energy, but I would argue the very imagination of God made tangible and visible. God's glory imbued in the creation itself. An imagination of harmony and peace. No ambition, no aggression, no fear, no us versus them. Scholars tell us that the story of creation that we know as Genesis was passed down from generation to generation among the Israelites, but it took its final form during the Babylonian exile. Think about it. The story of creation took on significance as the people were living in absolute chaos. Israel had lost everything: land, temple, king, everything that grounded their identity. They were conquered by the Babylonian army, their temple was demolished, and they were deported from their land and homes and forced to live in Babylon. And thus, within the Babylonian imagination, an imagination that's centered on their creation story that is antithetical to the one we find in Genesis. It is called the Enuma Elish, and in it, the world is born from violence. Creation is the collateral damage of a heavenly war. Order comes through conquest, and humanity is created from the blood of a defeated God to serve the superior God. Now imagine that you are an exiled people who are told and tempted by that story. Whose imagination are you living in? And yet, Israel in exile, immersed in that story, dared to proclaim something radical: that the world is not born from violence. It is spoken into being by love. Let there be light. Creation is gift. Everything is grace. Blessed by God, it is very good. Human beings are not slaves. They are image bearers. Please hear the implications. Genesis is not merely cosmology. It is resistance to the empire. It is theological defiance to the Babylonian imagination. It is Israel refusing to let Babylon tell them who they are. And we hear this refusal in our first reading from Isaiah. It too comes from the time of exile. Imagine that. God is still present, still creating. Thus says God, the Lord, who created the heavens and stretched them out, who spread out the earth and what comes from it, who gives breath to the people upon it. See, the former things have come to pass, and new things I now declare. Before they spring forth, I tell you of them. There it is, the imagination of God, still at work in the chaos, still creating. Let there be light. God's imagination keeps unfolding. We know that until we see it most clearly and know most fully the way and truth of God's imagination in the incarnation of Jesus the Christ. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. All things came into being through him. What has come into being in him was life, and the life was the light of all people. There it is. And in today's gospel from Matthew, we are invited again to join in the ongoing imagination of God. You are the light of the world, so let your light shine. Let there be light in you. We may not live in exile, but there are many who feel and are exiled, people who are living in darkness, chaos, afraid, hopeless, who desperately need the light. I was at an event not long ago in Mobile, and I sat next to this incredible woman. She's a Puerto Rican, and she kind of carries the title of the Latino mayor of Mobile. And I asked her, I said, "How are your people doing?" And she replied with 3 words: "They are afraid." I was then talking to a friend of mine who is about my age. We are similar in many ways except for the color of our skin. We got into his car and he pulled out a folder. He took his license and registration out, put them in the folder, placed them on the dashboard. I was really curious and I asked him about it. He said, "I do that because I'm afraid of what will happen if I'm stopped." What of creation itself? We hear the creation is groaning. I'm not so sure that it is, birth. I live in the house. I'm the only bishop in the Episcopal Church who lives in the house in which I was raised. I live on the shoreline of Cinco Bayou. I wake up every morning to the sounds of the dolphin's breath and the cry of the osprey. But for all the beauty, there is a change that worries me. I can show you pictures of a boy, yeah, it's me, playing on a beach that no longer exists. In the name of property protection, seawalls went up along the seashore. We're the only house that doesn't have one. And slowly the bayou became a bowl. The water now stands just below the steps that once descended to sand. What was once a playground for a boy is now a warning for an old man. I'm afraid. The world can be like a stormy sea whose name is chaos, and the waves of chaos pound at the church too. We talk so often about decline. We too often talk too much about money. We worry about our survival. Those are real challenges, but I am becoming convinced that our deeper crisis is not about statistics or survival. It is a crisis of imagination. We have been tempted and tricked like Adam and Eve. We too often live in the imagination of the church of yesterday and wonder why we cannot recapture that glory. We allow those worldly imaginations to disciple us instead of Jesus. We measure vitality by market logic. We adopt the culture's anxieties. We baptize competition. We mirror outrage. We confuse screen time for light. But the church was born from light for light. Remember, every time we pour water and mark a forehead with a cross, we are declaring whose imagination that person belongs to. Not Babylon, or any other nation for that matter, not the markets, not any politics, but the imagination of God, from God, and for God in this world. If that is the imagination in which we choose to live, it changes everything, doesn't it? Changes how we see one another, our neighbors and our enemies, how we understand power, how we measure success. So here's my challenge for you. It's a lofty one, I get that. How might we be recaptured and renewed by God's imagination? What would it mean for this diocese not simply to react to problems, and I'm looking in the mirror when I say all this, but to make God's imagination tangible and visible? What if our congregations became workshops of holy imagination, Places where people are inspired to be the image bearers of God. Where would that take you? Places where we learn to openly discuss our disagreements, seeking respectful understanding. What might we talk about? Places where generosity takes hold of our resources rather than being a barometer of how good the preacher is that Sunday. Places where baptismal identity precedes every other loyalty in this world, and we do not apologize for who we are. A people who faithfully strive for justice and peace among all people and respect the dignity of every human being. Can we still dream and struggle for a church that is created, called, and centered on God's imagination? Here's the truth of my conviction and question. I believe you're already forming an answer to this question. I say that because the really cool thing about being a bishop is I get to see what's going on everywhere. And one of the gifts of being your bishop is I get to see the light shining in our diocese. This is not meant as exhaustive, some of these things, so I know that there's plenty of other stories. I see the light in the ways, I'm going to get it past some statistics real quick, but I want to at least thank you because I see the light in the way that you took up my challenge in last year's convention to actually grow. Sunday attendance in our churches in this diocese last year grew by 8.3%. That is, clap for yourselves, yes. That is the 6th highest increase growth in all of the dioceses in the Episcopal Church. Just don't stop, y'all. Keep at it. It's called evangelism. Statistics can be useful, but they fade when compared to the stories of what you're doing as the children of light. I saw this light from the people from more than 20 congregations last spring when we packed 20,000 meals that were eventually sent to Africa by way of the group Rise Against Hunger. I saw it in the people of St. Andrew's Destin who let go of their building and turned that sacrifice into a $3 million endowment for our diocese. So that new ministries can be imagined and inspired, that gift will bear their name, the St. Andrew's Development Fund. I saw the light at Holy Trinity, Pensacola, where the parking lot became an assembly line, building 25 beds for children in need. And to the light of St. Andrew's, Mobile, offering 5 weeks of summer art classes for neighbors aged 7 to 99. And at my last visit, one of the neighborhood children was there. He was so moved by the compassion of the congregation that he started going to church there. And to the light shown at St. Luke's, Mariana, where their Threads of Hope ministry stitched over 1,700 hats for children. I saw the light in the fiery eyes of a woman from Trinity, Apalachicola, who mustered her friends to commit their energy to stand up and speak out for the rights of refugees and immigrants in their small town called Apalachicola. I also saw the light in the hopeful, passionate eyes of some very curious young adults at Christ Church, Pensacola. I also saw the light, I get to see the light in the eyes of every person I confirm and receive, for that matter. And they're there to claim Jesus as their Lord. And then there's George. George showed up one evening to help his parish open their doors as a county-sponsored shelter on a very frigid night. As he explained it, he was shocked and moved by the people who showed up. So George started asking simple questions. Who are they? What do they need? His curiosity became a cause, and the cause became a nonprofit group to which I actually got my discretionary fund directed towards at that visit. A year later, George leads a group that cooks and serves a hot meal every week in that same church that serves some 60 to 70 people. When George could have easily retired, he didn't. And George has shown this kind of light while he's been undergoing some other significant health issues in his own life. But George would not let the imagination of the world define his life. When I asked him about it at my visit, about why he did all this, he simply said this: I saw a need. You see, that's what the light does. It helps us see the need. And that's how God's imagination works. George points us onward. We need light so that we too can see and respond to the needs in our towns and world. Some of those needs are right here in our diocese. This year we crossed a sobering threshold. One that many dioceses have crossed before. Over 50% of our churches are no longer served by a full-time priest. Consequently, many communities no longer have weekly access to the Eucharist. What do we say to those who hunger for the sacrament that we cherish and perhaps take for granted? Do we tell our friends to drive somewhere else, find another town? Do we tell them to be grateful for morning prayer? Good luck. Or do we imagine differently? This need drives the work of our local school, and I deeply want to thank the clergy who have joined with us in this diocese to help our smaller congregations in order to consecrate and provide the elements for people who have no priest to do so. But there's more needed, and I hope that in the next years that we can actually see and imagine more ways to cooperate and coordinate, not just as 61 churches, but as the body of Christ, one Lord, one faith. It's easy to see the need for clergy in such a time. So what do we say to the faithful young mom who feels called to ordain ministry but cannot uproot her family and move across the country? Do we tell her, well, it must not be from God? Or can we imagine a new way to form and transform clergy in our diocese? And of course, in this diocese, our answer is yes. And thank you for your yes. When we began to form clergy locally, we were a handful of about 15 to 20 dioceses. Now, this year, over 90 dioceses of the Episcopal Church are involved in the work of imagining new ways to form clergy. And our work goes on. Such energy and effort to raise up leaders extends to the development of our lay leadership programs. Imagine a church, just for a minute, imagine a church served by a team of people who gather each week for prayer and conversation, each of them trained to lead a particular area of ministry, worship, preaching, pastoral care, evangelism, formation, a team that is shepherded by a priest who is not always on site but is deeply invested in their ministry. That is the imagination and the dream that I've been wondering about for a long time, and that is what shapes our local school. There's also a need for financial help in our churches. I was making my annual visit recently to one of our congregations that can no longer find a musician. That's another shortage, isn't it? So they use recorded music to lead their singing. On my visit, the technology acted up. Imagine that. And they began to apologize to me and told me that the system was 30 years old. They cannot afford a new one. How much would it cost, I asked. $2,500. I thought to myself, we should be able to do that. Actually, we should want to do that. That's why the Standing Committee this year shifted our 56-year-old loan fund into a grant fund. We'll still hold some monies back for emergencies like roofing or air conditioners, but we will no longer be a lending institution in this diocese. We want to be an incubator for the imagination of our congregations by giving out small grants to support your ministry and mission. These are not just administrative institutional tasks. They are acts of imagination in response to what we see that is needed. And it goes on. Our work matters in this world. And it matters because it's more than work. We are those who choose to live in the imagination of God and strive and struggle to make that imagination tangible and visible in this world. And the imagination of God actually has a name. Did you know that? The name of the imagination of God is this: Shalom. Peace. So I'm almost done. And one more page. So let me remind you of a second creation event in the Bible. I actually have this inscribed on my crozier in Hebrew, the word shalom. Imagine it once more with me. It happens when the risen Jesus appears to his friends in that locked up room. There is chaos and a deep void in the sunken hearts of Jesus' friends. There is darkness, and then Jesus shows up and speaks a word, God's word. Only this time the word is this: Shalom. Peace. ushering in a new creation of light in which we are called to live and love. The Spirit moves again. Go back and read it. It's pretty cool. And Jesus sends them forth, as the Father has sent me, so I send you. Go now and be bearers of light and builders of shalom, heaven on earth. So here we are, a people standing between various imaginations, narratives, the ideologies that tempt us and test us daily, imaginations that speak of ambition, achievement, aggression, algorithms, ways of being that are slowly and subtly destroying the very creation around us and between us. The darkness is real, the chaos is real, and yet even now there is the imagination of God calling to us and for us, crying out to us, let there be light. Crying out to us that all this is gift that is so very good, and that you and I are entrusted to be stewards and the very image bearers of God's imagination, and to be about the work of shalom. The future of this diocese will not ultimately be determined by demographics or budgets. It will be determined by which imagination in which we choose to live. If we believe that the world is born of conflict, we'll act accordingly. If we believe it is sustained by ambition and aggression, we will mirror that. But if we believe the world is spoken into being by love, then we will live as people of love. The question is not whether we have imagination. The question is, whose imagination will you live in? And perhaps this very moment, this stormy, uncertain, anxious moment, is precisely the moment in which God again speaks over chaos. Let there be light. Friends, you're that light. You are that light. You've been claimed in baptism, marked as Christ's own forever, and sent into this world as bearers of light in order to help God build shalom. So let's keep at it. Let's keep at it. Let us be workshops of holy imagination. Let us be stubborn in hope. Let us build what looks like heaven in the very places that feel like hell. For shalom is not only God's promise, it is God's calling. And y'all, the Spirit is still at work. So again, I say to you, let there be light.